Okay. Periscope on. Nope. That's the sad truth of it all. All right. Welcome everybody to our Thoughtful Thursday here. Second week of September. September 8th.
We're going to get started, right?
We are going to get started. Thank you for the acceptance of the delay. All right. This is a scary one. So if you need a little blanket or something or a stuffed animal, I understand. It starts off pretty bad. It doesn't get any better. This is definitely one that more people who've somehow forgotten. I don't get it. But what we're talking about mostly today is the issue with West Coast radiation damage and accumulation for people who have no idea that when you blow up a nuclear power plant on one side of an ocean, that for some reason it affects everybody else on the other side of the ocean. I love this talk because honestly, I just feel like I scream at the wall every time I give the talk. Because the sad part about this is I don't know of anything to do to fix it. I don't know of anything to do to fix it. Everything else I try to say, okay, here's the solution. Here's how you can fix this. Got inflammation? Okay, great, we got that. You know, you got a bad immune system? Great, we can fix that. But the unique part here is I don't know. And I'm not the person who they put in charge to fix it. Otherwise, I would probably try to find a way to get it done as soon as possible. And it's sad because the solution that we've heard out there is just let it go and it'll all be okay. So does everybody recognize or remember or at least have some concept of 5 years ago? It was big news, earthquake happened, nuclear power plant blew up. Okay. Does everyone know that it's still leaking today and we haven't stopped anything about it? Okay. So it is, and yet, does anyone see it on the news?
Yeah.
Really? Ever? You see it on the news still?
Once in a while. Yeah.
Once in a while, they mention a little bit of it. They saying anything good? Yes. So here's where I think the rubber meets the road on this one, though. Is you live in a place where, although you didn't see the explosion, you are still being affected by the byproducts of it. Whether you feel it or not, like Nancy was saying, it's interesting to me as to whether or not you can understand what's happening and how and why it's become such a big issue. When Chernobyl popped in the 80s and it blew up, the reactor there went through a full core meltdown and exploded material into the atmosphere. And they say that it, on average was somewhere between 30 to 50 kilometers surrounding that area, produced a large scale fallout cloud. But really 2 to 5 years later, they said, hey, it's all dissipating. And yet we still now today can test for the same radioactive elements in our rain and in the water and find that Chernobyl is present still. So that's been 30 plus years. That was one tiny little explosion in my book. Chernobyl itself, it's very funny. It actually has just been covered over by a concrete dome. That's their only way of solving the problem. They have not actually fixed anything, and it's just kept inside the little bunker that it was, and they just keep adding more concrete on top of the dome, and that's their solution. So they still really haven't dealt with that problem fully. The only beautiful part in it is that it was landlocked. And so it was encased by continental crust. And it has a lot of soil and now a lot of concrete all around it. And they are looking to eventually build a very large steel structure dome over top of it to where they won't have to keep adding the concrete. So the problem with nuclear reaction is that it just keeps eating from the bottom. So imagine that you're sitting here, you're on top of a very hot stove, and all you've done is take and cover it over with a little bit of plastic. Eventually, it melts that plastic, and it doesn't even matter. And you can add as much plastic as you want, as long as the stove's still burning. It's going to keep going through the plastic. Radiation, high-level fusion reactions eats concrete, and that's the issue. So they don't really have a game plan. But that was 30 years ago. Living in Southern California, for anybody who was around during the time in the early 60s, we actually had our own nuclear reactor pop in the Los Angeles mountains here, San Gabriel Mountains. It exploded, they said we're sorry, and no one cared after about 4 years. Kind of the same thing that's happened with Fukushima, which is really sad. But since they started doing nuclear reactors, since they started doing nuclear testing, radiation damage has been occurring to the human population for the last 6 decades. So it was already a problem. The reason this is different, unlike Chernobyl, this is on the edge of the ocean. So Japan's an island. There were 5 reactors. 4 out of the 5 blew up and melted into the ocean. They are no longer contained by anything. No man-made structure can grab them or hold them or do anything about it. They have burnt their way down through the actual crust. They've melted the rock that's surrounding them, and they just are sitting there emitting their material into the water. And it's funny because they, for some reason, are still concerned about the buildings. I mean, there's still nuclear material in the buildings, but the cores are gone, and they don't have any way of fixing this. But so when we were talking about the idea of how and why this wouldn't be affecting more and more people, I honestly think it is. And the sad part about it, though, is that you don't realize you're slowly accumulating things like radioactive cesium. Don't really know. Does anybody know where we store cesium? Yeah. Okay. Bones. Bones is one of the strongest places where we store cesium in our body. So now, let's just take today, 5 years later, and let's multiply that out by the next 5 years. If this is something that's just consistently going to be in our environment on the west coast of the United States, and really all of the northern hemisphere, then we're just going to keep adding more and more radioactive cesium to our bones until eventually, most of us, around during this time will have some type of bone marrow issue, bone cancer conditions, major osteoporosis conditions, lots of bone degenerative concerns. Radioactive iodine, on the other hand, that's the thyroid. Something that we store because our blood is filtered by our thyroid, and our body doesn't care. The thyroid gland, the cells in there do not care radioactive versus non-radioactive iodine. So every particulate that you're picking up through drinking water, eating fish, eating fresh vegetables, produce, eating meats, dairy, cheese, really anything, again, in the northern hemisphere, because of the wonderful evapotranspiration system we have on this planet, we get the slightly radioactive water picked up and then watered back down on top of us. So every time it rains, you're getting just another little dose of this radioactive iodine. And so all it takes is a certain amount, and eventually that will start causing radioactive issues and radiation damage in your thyroid. That to me is a big concern. So we can see how accumulation is the big key here to understanding this problem. And we may not feel it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but it might be 20 years from now that we actually have pulled enough material into our bodies because we weren't right next to the reactor when it popped up. They still, for some reason, and I don't understand this, but the International Regulatory Commission on Nuclear Reactors has said that only 2 people, one fell off a ladder and another one I think might have gotten burnt, died in Chernobyl. That's all they maybe put it up to 5. Then they say, well, the speculation is somewhere between 1 in 5 million people have probably died since the explosion, but there's no way to prove that. So the idea is, well, it really wasn't that big of an accident if only 2 to 5 people actually got hurt during the whole process. Kind of interesting. Same thing with Fukushima. The idea is when it first occurred, the reaction that we were experiencing on their side of the ocean didn't, quote unquote, kill anybody that day. One of the people who stayed through the entire initial cleanup phase died 9 months later, supposedly of massive cancering of the body. But it was so advanced that they actually said, well, there's no way it could have been caused by the radiation they received inside the reactor because, well, he must have had the cancer before the actual explosion, and that's what got him. When I hear stuff like this, it's just so irritating because that's silly. There's just nothing true about that. If he had anything in his body, yes, now getting exposed to high levels of radiation every single day at work would cause it to get worse. Why? We've lost at least, I think, a good number, like 6 or 7 of the first responders that were actually taking a lot of the diplomats and political people from Japan post the explosion of our own U.S. military off one of our actual destroyers that went over there and was pulling people off and trying to do the rescue evac. They have a lawsuit, luckily, I think 56 or 57 of them, and supposedly, I think it's somewhere between 7 or 9 have died so far. Mm-hmm. So we know that they have been affected, and they were there day 24 hours post-explosion. And then, again, the list can just probably go on and on. Well, they're suing the military, for one, which probably is going to go nowhere. But at least they're saying, hey, listen, you threw us into a radioactive zone with no protection, and obviously most of us are getting cancer and having bad problems, and someone needs to help hopefully pay at least medical bills. I've not heard, really, anything regarding the people of Japan and the levels of what they're experiencing in this. And they are the ones who got hit the day of, to where 25 kilometers away from the reactor, we know they were dosed with material. And yet we're supposed to just kind of believe it was all okay and nobody got hurt and everything's all fine. Let's not stop the reactors. I actually heard the one surviving reactor last year they wanted to turn back on and get it running again because, well, hey, it's still there, why not? And it's so interesting because it's not that I'm against nuclear technology or nuclear power. I actually think it's pretty interesting that we can do this. But the safety of it is a major issue, and we have to figure some systems out. Oh, it's horrible. Yeah, no, and that's why, as much as people here have allowed themselves to believe even the San Onofre being shut down, yeah, I think it was for 2 months, and then they turned it back on.
But aren't they off now?
Yeah, that's what they say. I don't believe that they've turned it off. And it's funny because even if you understand it this way, even if they've stopped adding fuel, it's still a nuclear reactor. It's still got nuclear material in there.
But did that one also leak though?
It has a few times. It's had some off-gassing. It's had some issues, yes. And there's definitely some concerns. So the unique place here is that I'm trying very hard to give this type of warning for people because I don't want anyone to come to me 10 years from now going, oh, hey, yeah, I didn't know anything about this. You know, if I know you and you haven't heard this discussion, then obviously I'm not doing my job. This is a great place for people to see that there is a very large concern. And I'm more about solutions, like I say. The idea is protection makes the most sense. So trying to protect yourself from these radioactive particulates and get your body back in a good function, understanding how to detox radiation is very interesting. As soon as Fukushima occurred, I have all the equipment in my garage to create a clean room and make it to where if we got the alert tomorrow, we could decon in front of the house and actually make it to where everything there would be set up and you would not bring radiation in high doses inside the house. I know that you're still getting some, but the idea is if they would put out the alerts, then yeah, you take care of that. You have to create a wash zone. You have to do the scrubbing on the outside of the house. And that's how you would deal with this on a day-to-day basis. If it continues to concentrate in our area, this might be something that is in our future, to where you would have to scrub down, wash it off. We have to take different types of precautions in order to work the system. So the reason why this is so interesting and such a big issue as well too, Chernobyl happened and it blew up once. And the idea is that once that first cloud of material came in and they cemented over top of it, then really it hasn't re-emitted anything back into the environment. It's just there and it's cooking and it's doing its thing. This, on the other hand, has been emitting every single day for the last 5 years plus, and there's been nothing to actually reduce any of it. So they did for a while there actually go and take some barges with some zeolite powder and drop it into the ocean to try to get it to settle and just keep it out of the water flow. But the amount that we're talking about is just so large that we have to understand taking care of ourselves is really the only system. We didn't really see much effect year 1, year 2, year 3. Year 3, we started seeing some funny stuff. Newport Cove, fish die-off, seals starting to look really sickly, being stranded in our area. The starfish wasting disease began. We started seeing lots of humpback whales with different types of cancerous nodules and material. So we know that something's happening. Even so much so that the coastline around British Columbia is one where we see very little bird, very little fish, very little sea life, a couple types of algae, a couple types of mussels, and one type of starfish is all that's left around most of the coastline of British Columbia. Last year was an interesting one because there was no sockeye salmon caught during the entire fishing season. So sockeye salmon, now if you find it, it's actually all from Newfoundland. It's Atlantic salmon. And they just didn't catch any. They were like, yeah, this is kind of odd. They still had some king salmon. They still had some of our, standard, but Alaskan salmon is probably another maybe year or so, and there won't be any of it. So there's interesting issues that we're seeing occur, but they're so subtle. They're so soft. It isn't this big burning mushroom cloud that we can actually go, aha, there's a problem, and learn how to deal with it. We have to kind of understand this in a different way. And that's where I don't know. Because some people are highly susceptible to radioactive damage, radiation decay issues. We're all susceptible to some degree. Some people, though, their bodies don't detoxify, they're not taking in the right compounds, they've left themselves a little bit underprotected, they have other immunocompromising or detoxification compromising issues, different things like MTHFR concerns, not having enough B vitamins, being really low on dietary oils, things like omega-3. All of that will exacerbate radiation damage inside your body. And that's definitely a place where I don't know every single person's paradigm or profile as to what has been occurring for them. So it took about 3 years for us to really see an effect. The last 2, we've seen things get worse, and it's got about a year or so now until Hawaii is covered with their material, and that's because of the Pacific Gyre and the big ocean currents that carry water surrounding from Japan up to Alaska, down the coastline of British Columbia. Luckily, where we're sitting at here, most of the ocean currents pop away from Santa Barbara and go back out into the big ocean. There's still some backwater channeling and still some issues that are causing some damage. But one of the things that's majorly concerning for me is the radiation level is strong enough to be killing all of the plankton and all of the small cell organisms that are actually feeding the rest of the food chain. So that's where there's a big concern in my future concept here to understand how we get away from this. I'm not saying everybody needs to pack up tomorrow. I'm saying I would think about it, truthfully. It doesn't seem like there's really a condition for things getting better. But like I was saying before, unlike most of the concerns that are out there, most of even the modeling still only takes the day of actually to be the concern. They don't render those models to where it's been releasing every single day from the day 1 all the way up till now to look at concentration levels. They have the models show one big burst the day of, and then they say, well, then it must have stopped, right? Because it blew up and that's all that's there. That's all that happened. So there's been a huge disservice. And we know now that it actually has been picked up by the rain cycle, by the wind cycles, and it's been moved around the rest of the planet. And we know that we're all getting affected by this.
So where would you move to?
somewhere south. I mean, eventually Antarctica. I mean, at least it's somewhat cold down there and preserved. You know, they've got better fishing than we do up here. Mm-mm. No, you can't go north. Everything concentrates. Everything concentrates. So, as much as I like talking about this subject, the most important thing for this class is to understand your opportunities and how to keep yourself protected. Preparation and protection. Starting as soon as you possibly can. If you have a family and you have anybody who's under the age of 50, they're going to get hurt by this. There's just no way of getting around it. That's the interesting issue. If you're going to be around longer than the next, say, 5 to 10 years, the idea is you're going to have problems. It's just going to accumulate. There's nothing that I can say to take that away. But our body can and will get rid of compounds, and it does have a detoxification system. It's not the strongest detoxification system, but it is one that actually can allow for your body to get out of a zone of being damaged. So, we talked a little bit about things like this last week when it came to just starting detoxification. But now we're talking a little bit more about being focused for a particular goal and for a program here and using compounds like zeolite. So the reason I say zeolite and zeolite first is because zeolite actually is anti-radiation. It does suck up radioactive elements and it will pull it out of not only your body tissues but your blood and your lymph. In your bath, it's going to take it off your skin and actually have your system be a little bit more clean. So much so that you can put it in your laundry and it makes your laundry really bright and awesome as well too. What's that? It's hard with the bones. Honestly, the idea is that your bones repair themselves every 4 to 5 years. It does eventually cycle through, and there will be some part there, but in that 4 to 5 years, if you have enough of a concentration, it's going to affect the marrow. It's just the way it goes. And making you aware of it today is one of those things that I'm the person that will probably say this, and most people won't, is mark your calendars, because if we see a big epidemic in the next 10 to 15 years occur, well, that guy Joe who had Thoughtful Thursdays was the person I remember saying that was going to happen. And then when everybody else running around going, I don't know why this is occurring. Why is everyone getting bone cancer and thyroid cancer? Oh yeah, that thing that happened, that Fukushima event. Yeah, that started this whole process. The interesting thing about zeolite is this. It really can't pick up anything when it's not connected or touching it. So it doesn't work really if it's not in your body, if it's not on the condition. It's kind of like a magnet to metal, bolts and nuts and things like that. You can't just have the magnet sitting over there and saying, okay, I hope that all the metal and the bolts get over to that side of the room just because I put a magnet over there. So this thing sitting in your cabinet like that, and it's just like, yeah, well, that guy said something about zeolite. I don't quite remember. Doesn't quite work. What's funny about zeolite is that I love working this into things that are already happening for you. So if you're taking an MSM drink, add it to your MSM. It's a great way to at least know, starting my day, and you don't have to do a lot. Half a teaspoon to a teaspoon is enough to where you can at least have presence in your digestive tract. It'll help allow that absorption to occur. And if you have the opportunity and you get to be in the bathtub that night, put some in the bathtub each night. Zeolite's one of these things that I put it on salad dressing. I put it into all of my drinks. I put it in really everything. I don't know of one thing consistently that I don't do more of. And yes, when I go to the beach, I add more. If I go out for very, very scary kind of sushi meals, if I am eating something that I question, I will cleanse for even 2 to 3 days. But zeolite is the great foundation to at least be focused on anti-radiation. It's not going to solve all of your problems. That's the only problem. It doesn't go into the brain very well. It will clean the liver. It will clean the intestines. It'll clean the kidneys. It'll help those parts of the body. It can clean the lymph a little bit, but not excessively. It won't go into the bones as far as I understand. And it won't get into areas like your joints as well as what I'd like it to. On the skin, it could. If it was just going around the body as like a mud pack, then yeah, there can be some some benefits. If you're mixing it with like castor oil or body oil and letting it sit on and then wash it off, it can absorb. Same thing like with the bathtub. Putting some in the bathtub, just enough to program the water and to get it to where the flocculated clay minerals will pull material off. At least you have some tool that you can use consistently. And the reason I like zeolite is it's non-reactive to just about everything else. It's not going to take away from your ability to have different types of medications if you're on medications, any other cleansing systems you might be working with, anything that you're also, the clays are very non-reactive to even the human body. So they're not going to destroy your immune system or make it to where your kidneys don't function. Or, the worst that could happen is you'd end up eating way too much and creating like a little dry plug in your intestines. But just mix it into some other drink and get it to where it actually is a part of your profile. So zeolite is the anti-radiation material. Welcome. Come on, sit down. Fantastic. Have a seat.
Thank you.
So if you're serious, like I was saying, you can go and get blood testing to see if you have radiation inside your body. If you got a lot of radiation, you can use a Geiger counter. If you walk up to a Geiger counter and it starts going and clicking, then it's time for you to get to somebody, and usually by that time you might be feeling something having an effect inside your body. Methylation factors do play a part in how well your body can detox radiation. So when it comes to your personal preparedness and your program that you want to use for yourself, not only is methylated B vitamins very critical because these help liquefy things and metabolize things and for your body to finally detox. So anyone here ever experienced a niacin flush? Fun! Yeah! Niacin is a great B vitamin for getting material to flow out of your body. Very, very important in understanding how to get your health back if you are experiencing a lot of toxicity. But TMG, the trimethylglycine here, the betaine product, again, will help you mobilize material. We talked a little bit about this last week. And TMG is very, very important if you want to assist your body in breaking material up and bringing it out. So trimethylglycine, or TMG, is one of these great products to use in conjunction with everything else you're doing. So not only is it good for your absorption, but the most important piece here is that things that are very sticky, that love to get inside your body, that need to be removed, it's a methyl group that would recognize it as being something that needs to be detoxified out. So if you're going to have a lot of help or benefit, that's why I was saying about using the morning mix with the zeolite. You can also be placing the TMG inside your morning mix as well too. What's unique is, I think for everybody out there, if you start taking TMG, you'll notice very quickly urination levels will increase for the first week or two. Depends on how much toxicity you got in your body. If you end up taking far too much, you'll feel it. I think I've gotten up to like 4 tablespoons of this. And yeah, it's a day or two of diarrhea. But the idea is that if you want to be pulling material out, then you have to be doing something to mobilize it. You have to be doing something to get it to move. And that's very, very critical. So the methyl groups in MSM, TMG, methylated B vitamins, really amazing for allowing the system to start to allow some benefit for getting some of the harder to reach locations. Not just the stuff coming into the stomach and the gut, but the material that's actually stuck in the muscle tissues, in the joints, in the organs, the filtration organs like the thyroid and the liver, especially.
Is that better than like the sulfur you were talking about last week? It's good for the liver to cleanse it, but this is like different.
It's different. Again, sulfur has its own function, and it actually makes the liver do its job better. Versus TMG is just going to help you detox. It's going to pull material out. So that's one of those places where you're trying to discover that whole combination there. Sulfur. There's no sulfur in TMG. So that's functionality versus just detoxification. So a little different. So then we move into something like the citrus modified pectin and detoxify. So pectins are on the actual International Regulatory Nuclear Commission's website for being great at removing radiation. They gave a lot of people post-Chernobyl pectins. People can find pectins in everything from apples to pears. Citrus modified pectin just happens to be the pith that's surrounded by lemons, oranges, grapefruits, things of that nature. So that white material that you typically just eat the inside and throw away the rest of it, that's what this is. That's the pectins that you're looking for. When you do modified pectin, they just pull off all the material out that's inside the structure of the pectin, and that lets it mobilize inside your body. Now this one will hunt, seek, and destroy. It will actually find radiation. It'll find particulates, pharmaceuticals, heavy metals. It'll find plastics, pesticides, things that aren't supposed to be in your body. It will recognize them, surround them, make it to where your body can't digest them or absorb them, and finally let your body hopefully excrete them and eliminate them.
How do you have plastics in your body?
Well, aerosol toxicity, you drink water, you've used a microwave, you've had Ziploc in your life. So we live in the plastic era, which means technically plastic's everywhere. And plastic just goes into a lot of things. If you've ever had a chicken nugget, you've technically eaten 25% soy foam, or styrofoam, which is what they use to make it squishy.
No kidding.
So, that's how it works.
Safe
What is
there.
that again?
This is Detoxify.
Oh, it's the top. Oh.
Yep.
Even at Chick-fil-A?
Chick-fil-A is actually cut meat. Now, anybody who's reconstituted or reprocessed, so you can't tell that it's a chicken whenever you break open the chicken nugget, typically styrofoam.
You're eating styrofoam?
Oh yeah,
How can they do that?
because it's technically safe. It doesn't hurt you, right? They've never done a study that shows it causes cancer or anything.
Food quality, right?
Yeah, it's that. But that's one of those. Hopefully, no one here is eating chicken nuggets on a day-to-day basis. I just feel bad for the little kids who can't get out of that zone, and they eat like 20 a day, and they think it's food. But that's one of these major issues. So yes, plastics, major issue, major issue. Anybody here? This is why I love this one. Anybody here do the plugins or like little air fresheners?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Okay, good. Major contributor to aerosolized plastic is the way that it actually goes up and keeps the smell, quote unquote, in the air. Is you're heating it, the heating element essentially takes the liquid plastic, that gel, and floats it into the atmosphere and makes it to where you get to breathe that in all day long.
Can you add that to the MSM as well?
You can. Like I say, definitely any of these can go to MSM drinks. This can go in any kinds of shakes or smoothies. I like actually putting Detoxify in with just coffee. Like I say, I think it has a really interesting flavor, and the coffee's bitter. It's really nice, and this kind of almost works as like a weird cream. It's unique though because the herbal blend here has a little bit of material like the shilajit and the seaweed extract to be a little more absorptive. And that can, like I say, I think it thickens up like cream does to coffee, so it's not that bad of a function when I don't do cream anymore in coffee. But that's where I like the effect of it. It's kind of, but any type of shakes or smoothies, if you're used to like yogurt smoothies or things where you're dropping ice cream in there, to make them nice, then this will thicken it up. The pectins, again, they emulsify. They really cause for good thickening agent. So Detoxify is a really amazing. But the difference. Zeolite has to touch, right? It has to actually be in contact with what you're wanting to detoxify. It's not going to go through a lot of the tissues of the body. TMG will help pull and will help mobilize, but it's not going to really absorb. It's just going to help move it around. It's going to help liquefy things and get things moving. Detoxify will go in and find material in the bloodstream, in the brain, in the joints, in the tissues that usually the zeolite may not be able to grab. And that's one of those nice places to where the three of these have a tremendous benefit working together inside the human body. Just in all around detoxification, but especially around the radiation issue. That to me is the most important piece here. Pectins inside, zeolite can go on the outside. TMG inside, zeolite's kind of the only one that really does a great job even being on the outside of the bodies. So in your personal protection program, say that 3 times fast, we really need to make sure that we do one thing and one thing alone. Even if it is something that it's struggling with and you're not able to kind of get iodine in your body yet, I don't care if you're just putting one drop on the side of your forearm or on the bottom of your foot. You need iodine to keep your body from absorbing radioactive iodine. If you don't have enough iodine in your bloodstream, you can test to find out if you've got adequate iodine. If you don't have enough, your body's going to find iodine particulates, and currently speaking, our environment's full of radioactive iodine, so of course you're going to absorb it.
I have a question about that, so I just got mine tested, and it's like 61, but I think if it's 50 something, your 61's on the low end, and it's 100 is on the high. But at the same time, I read something that if Hashimoto's thyroid, you shouldn't be taking iodine because it can cause some antibodies or something, so what do you do?
Take it.
Oh.
The reason they don't want you taking this with Hashimoto's is it will cure the Hashimoto's.
Oh. Okay.
That's the symptom. You may not be able to take a lot
Right.
at first. And yes, your antibodies might come up because your thyroid is detoxifying. And thyroid antibodies are produced when a body is already full of bromine, fluorine, radioactive iodine, all the other material. If you've been around longer than I have, you've already had 50, 60 years worth of radioactive iodine put into your body just by the absorption from the environment. So we spent 15, 20 years blowing up the whole Nevada desert with tons of radiation. We put it into all of the Hawaiian Islands and all the atolls in the South Pacific, and we went around the world and just blew stuff up all over the place and thought it was fun when we did it. So anytime you're watching those old newsreels of them showing hydrogen and atom bombs going off and blowing the ramshackle shack away, Trinity testing site literally is just in the Santa Ana wind path from this place that we're sitting at right here today. So whenever the wind twisted and went the other direction, yeah, you're getting all that. And it's still in the environment. It doesn't go away. So it's 40,000 years for it to hit a half-life, meaning half of the particulates have gone away. And here's one of the main issues I have that you might hear somebody when they're talking about Fukushima. They go, but the half-life of cesium is 2 years. Well, it's been more than 2 years. So it must all be gone, right? Well, that's where I really wish that we had Sue and, not Al, I'm thinking Al. Is it Sue and Al? Am I not Al?
You're too young to have
Oh, Phil?
Phil,
I
not
can
Al.
see
Phil, you're right. Right. Sue and Phil. Phil worked on nuclear subs. Half-life means 1/2 of the weight of whatever it was has been reduced from being radioactive to being slightly non-radioactive. It's still heated. It's still a radioactive particulate. But the idea is half of it's been destroyed. So if you started off with 3 nuclear reactors full of radiation, and then 2 years go by and you get half of it, well, 2 more years until you get half of that. 2 more years until you get half of that, 2 more years until you get half, and this can literally go on for the next 600 years until cesium would actually be to a point where it wouldn't be reactive to an environment. So if you're going to be around for the next 600 years, eventually cesium will be okay. But for most of us, it's not going to happen. I'm only going for 120, 126. But the idea is that radioactive iodine, half-life, is about 14,000 years. So the radioactive iodine that's in the environment now is going to stick around for a long time. And no, it's not just, it's funny because the country of Japan, they're just cutting out thyroids ahead of schedule. They're just like, well, it's going to happen anyways. We're just cutting out thyroids and saying, you don't need it anyways. You'll be fine. We can medicate that. You're still going to absorb the iodine. The iodine's still going to come into your gut. It's still going to be a part of your body. The thyroid is just where we concentrate iodine. But we have iodine in our whole body system. It's part of our immune system. It's part of our vascular system. It cleans a lot of our organs. And it's one of those things where it's not that you're safe just by cutting out the thyroid. It's just now we can't concentrate it, and that means the potential for cancer at the thyroid gland will be minimalized. But parathyroid, all the lymph nodules, every place that uses iodine, the rest of the body will still have a problem. So it doesn't solve anything. The only way I know is to honestly be protective and to try to work as much as you can against it by keeping good iodine back in the body. So I think we're.
Iodine also very calming, or no?
No, iodine's very energizing, typically. The only problem with a person with Hashimoto's is that it will rev up your immune system and get your adrenals to stress and actually might cause you to feel very lethargic. Lethargic is very different than the idea of calming. Lethargic is meaning that you actually can't support your energy and your body kind of crashes. That's very different than, oh, I'm just relaxed and I'm very calm. So that's an interesting issue there. And that means you are kind of working against your immune system. And that's something where we have to watch what's going on. Foot application, really good idea for iodine for people with Hashimoto's at first.
Yes, comment. How good does it really digest in the body? Can some people be sluggish at digesting it and accumulate?
Oh yeah, no, it definitely can, but it's unique because most people's bodies, like I operate, you were saying, like I say, they put the values between 56 or something and 109 or whatever. I think for the I'm operating somewhere between 600 and 800 on the average. So 5 times, 5 or 8 times of what they say you should have. If I get above 1400, I can feel it. It feels weird. Iodine toxicity can occur, but it's one of those where, again, most people are suffering from a very high deficiency of iodine versus there being a very overabundant level of it. Get your levels tested, understand what's going on inside your body. If you're starting to supplement and you want to do mega dosing, then that's a nice place to know. You can get that test done pretty easily.
I was going to say that about a year or so ago, I started taking that,
Mhm.
and I was thinking when I started that one of the young men that I don't know if he works anymore or not, but he said that type of iodine that you really can't overdose on.
It's unlikely, yes. Again, Lugol's or veterinary style iodine, and like I say, nascent or iosol, it's very homeopathic. It actually goes, and if there is an excess, it just gets stored, it gets put into fat, it gets put into other areas, and that's why I don't mind having a little bit extra versus most people are down in the point to where they're crashing and they're not keeping their good levels up. But yes, this is definitely one of those where it is the safest that I know of, and that's why we recommend it very consistently for people to start working with. And yes, a lot of different health function can get back into our bodies and start working much more effectively
I
for us.
love it,
You can take it throughout the, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you raise my hand? No, you can take it throughout the day, right? Not just once a day.
If you take it late in the day, just like a cup of coffee, it might keep you awake. It'll give you some energy. So there is some issues depending on your sensitivity to it. For me, I don't have any reactions to that. It doesn't bother me. Don't sleep much, so I'm okay.
You and Donald Trump?
Yeah.
I take good morning and sleepy.
Oh yeah, very much so.
I took it like, I didn't know, I don't get it easy.
Let's see. I enjoy insomnia. You fight against it.
But then don't your cells not repair when you don't get enough rest?
What happened?
Your cells are
There you go.
If I wasn't eating the way I do, yes. Very true.
Yeah.
But now, good quality sleep. Sure. Good quality sleep. That's a lot. Honestly, most people could go with at least a good solid hour. Yeah. But that's also one of those where your relaxation level is very minimal as well too. So your body can't calm. Like I hit the pillow and I'm done. There's no.
It takes a while to go to sleep. But then once I sleep, I'm asleep.
That's good. That's good. Very good. The other thing that can start working, because one of the side effects of radiation poisoning, radiation damage, even at a low level, is obviously the marrow, the white blood cells, the different types of things that are produced inside our marrow can start to be affected. So even one of these unique things for a lot of people to see is that their immune system becomes slightly compromised. They start getting more cross-infections. They see shingles come up. They see other types of issues occurring. Be working with medicinal mushrooms. Not only are they DNA protective, which is great around radiation, but they are immunoprotective. So a lot of people's issues when they start to absorb radiation in their body is they will see the shutdown occur and they don't realize this is that first sign that there's actually bioaccumulation of radiation and you're needing to start working against this process. So the mushrooms, the immunity matrix in the mushrooms, so that way your body can actually start to keep coping. And again, what's nice about this whole concept that we're talking about today, every one of these things will benefit your body in all the great ways that they are good nutrients, they're beneficial, they keep the body healthy, they detox, they work. So there's really no reason to not be working almost in preemptive sort of ways to keep your body healthy today. not waiting until, like I say, if we waited, the government supposedly gave us like a 1 week window of time where they said maybe everyone should be buying iodine tablets and consider taking them after the explosion. Then they're like, yeah, forget that. They themselves went and bought 12 million doses of it kept it in a bunker and just in case but for the rest of us, they're like, no, you're fine, don't worry about it, it'll all be okay. But this is where, in this beautiful anti-radiation package, you can start to see how you can build the best conditions for yourself and allow the body to be fortified a little bit more effectively and be helpful. Like I say, these great solutions are good no matter what, just because we're in a bad environment, and that's what we've kind of been focusing on here in September, is that we need to detoxify kind of all the time. Low levels, not always doing super dosing, but the idea is it needs to be a part of your general program.
Did you say, get tested for iodine or test it for your thyroid?
Iodine.
So see if we have iodine?
Correct. In the serum of the blood.
And, did you say there's no sulfur in TMG?
No.
And then did you say, when you said TMG is liquefies things and detox pulls things out and zeolite grabs at things, what does iodine do?
Iodine displaces. So in a way, or it makes it to where you don't absorb radioactive iodine. So when you have sufficient iodine, then your thyroid cells, your thyroid gland is very unlikely for it to absorb large amounts of radiation if you do get exposed. So
like it
hinders, yeah. So it negates the absorption of the bad iodines out there. Because the unique thing about this is radioactive iodine is iodine 131. Holistic, healthy, happy iodine is 134. So that's when we look at the actual atomic structure of the iodines, that's all the difference is. And your cells don't really care 131 versus 134. That doesn't bother them at all. When we want to give ourselves as much of the good stuff, so that way it doesn't say, oh, well, I'm deficient. I'm just going to pull in the bad stuff anyways and use it for what I can use it for. And like I say, one particulate of radioactive iodine is enough to burn 6 or 7 cells surrounding it. So if it and then moves past those cells, it's just going to keep burning through the other ones that are in the area. So one of the techniques medically that they've used for the last 60, 70 years now is if you have an overactive thyroid, well, we'll just have you drink radioactive iodine, we'll just burn that thyroid right out of you. And then you don't have any more problems, right? Life is good. Yeah, I don't understand how stuff like this worked or why people thought that this was the way to go. We do see a lot of benefit in other items. These ones are the ones that I want people to go away with tonight that are very effective for just being radiation protected. That's the most important piece. So when you're talking to somebody, I'm like I said, I'm a little crazy. So I'm inside a store. I don't really have anything else to do except for think of something witty to say to the person behind the cash register. And I just hope 5 people behind me hear what I'm saying. You know, like it's just the way that I've gotten used to doing this type of thing, of spreading this type of information. So many people out there just have no idea this is even going on. And I think I'm letting the cat out of the bag. The reason why no one hears anything about this is West Coast real estate would literally plummet the moment that they would say, oh, by the way, the ocean's radioactive. Why would you want beachfront property if that's the case?
But they're already to go to the beach.
I know, I agree. I don't like it. I wish it was one of those things, and that's why my kids get zeolite baths every night.
You have to take those all individually, or can you throw them in your
Throw them all in the smoothie. Like I say,
The iodine also?
the iodine will go in the water by itself.
I do, yeah.
Yep, iodine by itself. But these can all go in a smoothie. They don't really have any ridiculous taste anymore since they took the turmeric out of the zeolite, or out of the detoxify. So the nice thing there is a little bit of shilajit. If you don't like your shilajit, then you might have some problems.
So what does the immune things do?
Just immunoprotective. Keeps your immune system functioning, even if you're getting the radiation damage occurring. So yes, this is a process where talking to people, mentioning it around Thanksgiving, talking on Monday Night Football, if that's what you have to do, to get people to go, yeah, don't you remember that thing that happened? Oh yeah, that Fukushima thing, yeah. What, do you know what they did with that or how that all came up? And most people just, they blocked it out. It doesn't even matter anymore. Japan got mad at us for actually celebrating the anniversary 1 year later because it put it back in the news and allowed for people to see on the mainstream for the greater the third world that yeah, this did happen. So we're still. I think it's funny, and the reason I'm talking like this is because they're about to release a movie, and I hope everybody goes at least to maybe catch it if they can. I'm anti spending money on movies that produce propaganda that's horrible for the humans to hear. So wait till it's in the cheapy theater if you can at least. But it's the Deepwater Horizon event. It's been promoted recently. It's been on TV, getting advertisements. Don't give them money, please. When they did this to the Atlantic Ocean and they popped the methane sumps underneath of Louisiana and there in the Gulf of Mexico, they were given the authorization to technically spray all of the coastline with a particulate that caused the oil to decoagulate, to not clump up, so that way technically the oil was gone, called Corex. And so they sprayed Corex for months after the oil spill. And the resulting Deepwater Horizon. I'm really curious to see what they put out about this because I saw in the preview, I think Mark Wahlberg's playing the role of the main guy or whatever, but they have this gorgeous American flag sitting on top of this drill rig. BP Oil did this, and I think they ended up paying a little over $1 billion. I think it was just nothing for them. I mean, it really didn't affect anything. They didn't get hurt by it. It was just another loss. It'd be like you going and hitting someone else's car and saying, "Buddy, can I have $10 to fix this?" I mean, it just didn't matter at all. So it's really bothersome to me when I see things because the Atlantic Ocean got its hit before the Pacific Ocean, but both of them have been hit pretty heavily by environmental disasters that we don't even know the side effects of. We are seeing issues. I am dealing with people who are having eye sockets, sinuses, ears, everything like that be affected by these chemicals in both oceans, and seeing major damages. People in the Caribbeans and things like that are feeling these effects now. And like I say, if you catch the movie, if you have an opinion, let me know. I'm really curious. I will wait until I don't have to spend more than $5 to see it, or even later than that. Who knows? But yes, I'm sure there's going to be a movie about Fukushima soon that just underwrites this whole issue and makes it seem like it was no big deal. We got to stay vigilant. We got to stay operational and understanding what's happening, and that will help us be stronger in the future. So I really do hope these materials become part, if they aren't already a part, of your nutrition solutions and get you on a program of being helpful. Like I say, come to this to the wellness center. We've got the infrared sauna. It helps liquefy material. It helps detoxify as well too. All these things work for our benefit, and we have to use them as much as possible. Otherwise, we're going to pay the price for them. And that's where, like I say, tonight's talk started off bad, didn't really get any better, and leaves you honestly going home, hopefully not feeling too good either. And I'm so sorry that that's the case. But it is one of those where knowing this, and for people catching this online, hearing this, hopefully it gets them focused in the right way to take care of themselves, their families, and still bring attention to a major cause and a major issue that we are all dealing with. So I enjoy you for the time that I get you every single week. Thank you so much for finding me here. If you're catching me online, feel free to send me information or questions at brilliancenutrition@gmail.com. And thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend. Have a great time.
Just a quick question, do you eat fish at all?
I do now, very selectively, and I try to eat everything from South America or further south. So like I'll eat a little bit of Chilean sea bass or like what they call monkfish. I will eat some halibut from the Sea of Cortez, which is down around Baja. But other than that, Scottish salmon, New Zealand salmon, those are still options. No tuna. So tuna's terrible. Tuna was bad before they even put Fukushima in the water. I mean, so that's a major issue. They already had high levels of arsenic and lead and mercury anyways before all this. Now they've got other issues going on.
What about salmon?
Atlantic salmon, it can be okay. So Scottish, Norwegian, Newfoundland, those can be fine. New Zealand is another great place that still has good salmon.
So where do you get your like halibut? Where do you get it?
Every so often they bring in Sea Cortez halibut to Roots. I see it at Roots every so often. If not, what I like to do is actually go down to like the Leucadia Farmers Market,
Oh, yeah.
or you can go down to just Fisherman or the Seaport Village and pick up fresh caught material from Baja and South. Like I say, we are a little bit protected in this little alcove of Southern California because the big ocean current goes back out to Hawaii before it comes directly down here. But everywhere from Santa Barbara, San Francisco, all the way up to Seattle, and all the way through there, it's going to have a lot of issues in the next upcoming years. So major concerns, and it's definitely something where I just want people to know, watch out, be careful, be doing good stuff for you, and hopefully that'll all be something we can talk positively about when they really do put a solution out to us later in the future here. But if you're looking to pick up items, like I say, feel free. Let Maddie have those on the counter. She'll get you checked out, 10% off for being here. I thank you guys so much for coming, for being so attentive, and hearing some of these details. If there's anything else you need, I'm going to turn everything off, and then I can answer questions past that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
That's right.